Hi guys, today I wanted to show you how I restored my Nintendo NES. But before I start, let me thank everyone in supporting our channel and keep on commenting and like our videos so that we keep the channel alive. I will give you a brief history of the Nintendo NES so that you will be a bit familiar with the console. Then I will show you what I did in order to restore the Nintendo NES. I had to split this video into parts as it was quite long, the process, and also I didn't want that you miss some parts, important parts, such as cleaning the cartridge port and also cleaning the metal chassis inside the Nintendo NES. So let's start with the feature. The Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES, was first released in Japan on July 1983 and was formerly known as the Famicom. In October 1985, the NES was later released in the northern US, which helped the console market to gain popularity after the game console crash of the 1983. In Europe was launched 3 years later, which due to its already popularity in the US, some consoles were brought by gamer enthusiasts. At first, the Famicom was a bit slow in sales due to a bad chip that caused the system to crash, but by 1984 it became a best-selling console in Japan. Following the popularity in Japan, Nintendo launched it in North America. At first, Nintendo tried to launch it through Atari, but the deal was delayed due that Coleco was advertising Donkey Kong, which violates Atari's agreement. Later, CEO Ray Kassar was fired, so the deal was stopped and Nintendo opted to market its own system. In June 1985, Nintendo unveiled the American version with a new case style with a zero insertion force cartridge slot feature. The new case was designed by Lens Bar and it was designed based on a video cassette recorder, as at the time they were very popular. In Europe things went differently, as distribution was through third parties, companies such as Mattel and Bandai, and most of Europe saw the new console in 1986 and the northern part by end of 1987. It kept its popularity until the mid-90s, as the PlayStation and other more powerful consoles started to dominate the market. As for prices in Japan, the released price tag was around 14,800 yen, which today's equivalent is around 27 euros. The US version had a price tag of 89.99, which today's equivalent is around 179 euros, while in Europe the prices ranged between 70 to 80 sterling, which by today's inflation is around 190 euros. Recently, Nintendo released the NES with a price tag of around 59 for the US or 55 euros for the Europe version. Today I will show you how to dismantle the NES, do some maintenance on the motherboard, the solders over the RF modulator, and final cleaning. I will be working on an Italian NES version distributed by Mattel Electronics. It's important to keep all the screws grouped as not to damage the case, while assembling and identifying from where you remove them. If you want, use this video as a guide and keep in mind not to mix screws. To start, we need to open up the case, turn over the console and remove the 5 screws at the bottom and the 2 small screws on the side. Turn over the console with the top cover facing up. Remove any cartridges inside the unit and remove the top cover. Now it's time to remove the screws that holds the metal housing and motherboard. Remove the 7 screws that holds the top metal shield and remove the shield to reveal the additional screws that holds the motherboard. To disassemble the cassette loader and motherboard, remove the 4 long screws that holds the cassette holder and 4 short screws for the motherboard. Now you can pull the whole motherboard from the case, being careful for the joypad ports cables being unplugged from the motherboard. Separate the bottom shield from the motherboard and keep all bits and pieces on a side not to lose any screws or mix them. Don't forget the 2 screws that hold the joypad connector, as you need to wash the plastic case later. I used plain soap to clean the plastics, as not to remove any logos or markings on the case. Now it's time to desolder the ref and rectifier shielded board. This is an important part, as if there is rust underneath the metal case, it will start damaging the board. As for the capacitors, I did not need to replace them, as I checked them with a capacitor meter, and they are still close to the marked value. Usually you don't need to replace these capacitors, as in such very old consoles they last, but better check them just in case 1 or 2 are damaged. Start desoldering the vortex, being very careful and applying a lot of heat, as there is a lot of soldering to be removed. You need a good soldering iron, as the process is quite long, due that you need to apply heat for a long time. As you can see, bit by bit the solder is removed and eventually the RF modulator will start to lose up. Keep removing the solder until to a point where you need a flat screwdriver to lift up the modulator, as the last bit of solder will still hold the modulator in place. Slowly with the screwdriver, eventually the modulator will separate from the mainboard. Once separated, remove all the residual solder that there is in the slots, as for easy insertion later of the modulator. Cleaning the board is quite easy, as we removed the modulator now, and most components are flat. Just be careful of the capacitors not to damage them. Start by removing dust with an anti-static brush from both sides of the motherboard, being careful not to damage any components. Use a larger brush on the solder part, as no components will be damaged. Also, with the longer hard brush you can start cleaning the cartridge port. With a very small brush, clean between components to make sure no dust is present. Finally, with the cleaning spirit and the cloth, start removing any markings or grease present on both sides of the board. With the cloth, clean the cartridge port as shown, as dirt usually accumulates there and the dust will create loose contacts failure to load the game. You can use a credit card swipe reader cleaner as well if you want, as the cartridge port is quite large. Here I used a flat brush soaked in spirit to clean the inside of the cartridge port. Use a metal polish to clean the metal silver side shields contacts as shown in the footage. This will also remove any dust or rust that was under the modulator. Later, we will also clean the modulator shield, so to make sure that it's rust-free. The final results, they should look like in this feature. Now it's time to clean the modulator, but before you start you can check that the RF power is working properly. With the modulator off the board, you can test the RF modulator by applying power and short pins 4 and 5 on the RF modulator to act like a switch. I also applied the video and audio to the RF modulator on the related pins to make sure it's working properly, but be careful on the video pin as the video signal must be less than 500 mV. This is due that this video signal going out of the video IC is very low and needs to be amplified properly. If it works, you should have a black image on your RF TV, or if you connected the video signal, you should have an image. For additional info, please refer to the schematic diagrams applied here. Start by cleaning the metal housing with any metal polish you like. You can separate both upper and lower shields, as they are just snapped in. With a brush, clean the dust inside the modulator, being careful not to damage any components, especially coils and RF chokes, as if you hit them hard, the RF modulator will not work. Once this is done, you can start cleaning the sides of the metal box, being careful not to put any metal polish in switches or inside the metal case. Once the back and top cover are cleaned, you can clip them back and clean the modulator from any finger markings. Don't forget to clean the 3 phono plugs, so they look shiny as well. It's time for the assembly of the modulator. Be sure that everything is clean, especially where the modulator fits, and no markings on the bottom metal plate, as after a while they will become permanent. Fit the RF modulator in place, turn over the board and turn the tags inward so the RF modulator holds in place. Once this is done, start soldering the metal modulator tags so you fix it permanently. Make sure the modulator is flat with the motherboard not to leave any gaps. Finally, solder the 5 pins of the RF modulator. Clean any finger markings that were made during soldering the RF modulator. This completes the modulator cleaning and assembly on the motherboard. So, as you have seen, the process is quite long, and in order to remove the motherboard from the case, it takes a lot of time due to the cables and components attached to it, and the screws, metal case. All this has to be recorded. That's why I do these type of videos, so that if you need information, you can use them as a guide. I also showed you how to clean that cartridge port that usually gives trouble when you insert the cartridge, and I had also to remove the RF and rectification board in order to check that underneath the RF there are no damages and no dirt, that it keeps the machine from working properly. Basically that's it for this feature. The second part will be available soon as we finish it. May I remind you of the giveaways that we have on our Facebook page group and also on our YouTube channel. So subscribe, and if you need more info you can join the group, and or if you have any additional questions you can leave them in the comment and we will answer them back as soon as possible. That's it basically. Hope you liked it, and see you next time.